20,000 years after human interstellar colonization. Arrakis, a planet in the corner of the galaxy. It looked like the current planet Mars. It's almost entirely dry, sandy dune desert. That's why it's called Dune. High temperatures and dust storms characterize the planet. Sometimes, wind speeds of up to 750 kilometers per hour. Sand swept across the planet like a bullet. On this planet, in an extreme natural environment, the rulers established the base of Arrakis. The city was built on top of an open rocky outcrop, surrounded by mountains on three sides. It stretches for nearly 10 kilometers. The entrance to the city was fortified with walls. It also prevents the escape of captured foreigners. Representing the center of power, the Arrakis Palace, rising from the base of the mountain, is the largest building in Dune world. It overlooks the entire city. The structure of the building is primarily for defense. The entire building has no windows, only slender observation ports that, like a World War II bunker, it's cold and rugged. The city is half buried under the ground, covered with 2-meter thick stone on the roof. A few narrow light holes and vents, so that the interior is kept at the right temperature and light. The slopes of the buildings are so angular that wind and sand can slide over the surfaces of the buildings. Huge buildings, showing the crazy history and religious culture. Power and ambition are at the base of this great structure. The building accentuates the sense of power of the cutouts and the massing. The wall gaps just the right amount of light and shadow design. From the spaceships to the architecture, it's all about raw and pure expression. The descendants of mankind after 10,000 years recall the ancient Earth civilization through the form of architecture. The architecture of cities around the world. All are adapted to the natural and technological conditions of the moment, and most often with some kind of faith. Over many centuries, they have developed unique forms. Why isn't there more advanced technology in 10,000 years? There have been times when mankind has been highly technologically advanced. Artificial intelligence technology developed to a very high level. It gradually broke through the singularity and began to break away from human control. After the AI awakened and started a rebellion, the conflict between humans and AI machines lasted for nearly 1,000 years. In the pages of history, it's called the Battle of Bartram. Humans paid a terrible price to defeat the AI. From then on, all automation and intelligent devices were banned. At this point, humans can only survive by modifying people in seemingly primitive ways. So we're wary of all the various AI algorithms that are now substituting for human thought, memory, judgment, and more. The age of fragmentation is gradually sealing our human brains. In Europe after the Second World War, the architecture of cities in all countries was severely damaged. After the end of the war, faced with dilapidated cities, architects faced a new set of challenges when designing. Limited resources, multiple overlapping events and ideas contributed to the emergence of brutalist architecture. In addition, younger architects in particular believed that modernism was nothing more than an aesthetic language. They sought to create architecture rooted in functionalism and monumental expression. Early proponents sought to reassert the goals of modern architecture: lower costs, honest confrontation with materials, simplicity of form, and clarity of expression. Modernist architect Le Corbusier the pioneer of mixed concrete social architecture. In 1952, he designed the Marseille Apartments, a social housing project for workers in France. 337 apartments accommodating up to 1,600 people, representing the birth of brutalism. The building's large reinforced concrete frame, modular apartments, and unadorned features gave rise to a new style of architecture that has been widely accepted and popularized around the world for nearly 3 decades. This aesthetic, with its emphasis on architecture and raw materials, evolved with the post-war reconstruction efforts, initially spanning Britain and Europe, then spread to other parts of the world. Our brutalist architectural travels begin in the UK. Denis Lawston designed the National Theatre. It's taken 13 years for people to realize that it's probably Britain's best-loved brutalist building. This is thanks to its generous public spaces, considered massing, and respect for its urban surroundings. As one of the seminal works of British modernism, the National Theatre, like many great buildings, it has also been defined as having a provocative aesthetic and bold complexity. The color choices echo the stone of Waterloo Bridge and Somerset House. The grain of the wood paneling conveys a sense of antiquity, that even extending to the interior of the theater, where the grain is exaggerated to isolate sound. Boston City Hall. The architects created a monumental government building with period attributes. It is one of the famous brutalist buildings in the United States. Appreciating brutalist architecture. It is important to look at it closely. Certainly, brutalist architecture is formally striking, and perhaps overly aggressive, but their most attractive attributes are in their surfaces, their details and their textures, the way they capture and play with light, the imposing, mixed concrete aesthetic. Architectural enthusiasts and critics have long been divided. The brutalist architecture has an element of emotional intensity. It is also one of the most divisive architectural styles. Tadao Ando, one of Japan's most important architects, and one of the greatest representatives of the minimalist trend in contemporary architecture. Ando is known for his works in concrete and light. The light and shadows of the Church of Light are representative of his characteristic. For Ando, the Church of Light is an architecture of duality, the dual nature of existence, solid and void, light and dark, stark and serene. The coexisting differences leave the church void of any and all ornament, creating a pure, unadorned space. The intersection of light and solid raises the occupants' awareness of the spiritual and secular within themselves. There is an inherent tendency and trait lurking in Ando that few other architects have. That is the inspiration from the classical architecture of the Acropolis. Classical architecture in the West is based on a system of order with the cylinder as an element. In the East, Ando used concrete walls as an alternative to the foundational elements. That created an architectural system equivalent to the order of the cylinder. The concrete walls, like images of abstract art, continue to exude the magic of self-expression. One major theme found throughout his career is the use of natural elements in equal or greater focus than the architecture itself. I don't believe architecture has to speak too much, says Ando. It should remain silent and let nature in the guise of sunlight and wind. The architects revisited the traditional notion of brutalist architecture, to proving that concrete can be beautiful. All trends are cyclical. Brutalism has not disappeared completely.